ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our Fur Insulation and Heat Loss Lab, or our Animal Adaptation Lab. So if you are completing this section, it's option number A for lesson 1, and you are going to need this worksheet. So this is what is attached to the lesson 1 in our Google Classroom. You have a choice. You are welcome to print this out. You are welcome to use a piece of notebook paper and record this same information on that notebook paper, or you're welcome to fill this out digitally. Whatever works best for you. Just remember to make sure that if you print it out or write on a notebook paper, that you take a picture of it and upload that picture to the assignment so that I can grade it for you. All right, so in this lab, we're going to be comparing 2 graduated cylinders that are filled with warm water. We're gonna wrap one in fur, and this is just cotton felt that we're gonna use to simulate fur. And we're gonna leave the other one unwrapped and record their temperature over time. So before we begin the experiment, we need to do some recording. We need to get our lab set up. So the first thing we need to do is to fill out our hypothesis. And our hypothesis is our statement of what we believe is going to happen. So based on my understanding of animals, I'm going to make a statement, and I'm going to say that the graduated cylinder that's wrapped in fur will lose less heat than the cylinder that is not wrapped in fur. You might make a different hypothesis. Either way, go ahead and pause the video and record your hypothesis now. Okay, the next thing we need to decide is what is our independent variable. So an independent variable is the variable that the scientist is going to change. So ours is the fur. So a fur-wrapped cylinder is our independent variable. The next thing on our list is the control. And the control is the graduated cylinder that we do nothing to. Our dependent variable, that's what we're going to be measuring. So our temperature is going to be dependent on whether we're wrapped in fur or not wrapped in fur. So temperature is our dependent variable. And our constants, what are we keeping the exact same between these 2 cylinders? Well, we're keeping the same amount of water and the same type of water. We're going to be recording its temperature at the same time. So type of water, amount of water, and the time that we record the temperature is all going to be remaining constant. All right. Next, we've got our data table, and it's already set up for us. So we know that we're going to be recording temperature every 2 minutes for 20 minutes. And we're going to be recording 2 different temperatures, one for the unwrapped cylinder and one for the wrapped cylinder. There are all kinds of different types of thermometers available. And at school, we have these really great vernier temperature probes. And so what this does is it's a computer that can not only record our data, but also generate a graph for us. Okay, so what I'm going to be looking at is the temperature. So each of my temperature probes has its own line item, and they're not in the cylinders yet, so they're just ready to go. And now I'm going to take fur, and I'm going to wrap one of my graduated cylinders. So this is my independent variable, right? A graduated cylinder with fur on the outside of it. Then I have a little rubber band that I'm going to use to keep the fur on the cylinder. Okay. And now I'm going to record my initial temperature. So I've got to make sure I have my probes organized for 1 and 2. And I don't know how well this will come across on the video, but I'm waiting for them to stabilize so that I can record my temperature. And it looks like I've got 33.3 degrees Celsius for my wrapped cylinder. So I'm going to record that in the top spot. And I have 32.7 for my unwrapped one. Okay, and I'm going to start the clock now, and every 2 minutes I'm going to come back and take a temperature reading and do this for 20 minutes. I'm not going to video that because that would be a very long video. But here in just a minute, I am going to post up all of my results, all of the data that I collect over the next 20 minutes. And you can pause the video and record that data table now. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully you have paused the video and recorded all of our data from the table that was posted. If you have, your data table should look something like mine. So now we are ready to create our graph. And for the graph, you are welcome to use graph paper like I have at home, or you can just use a blank sheet of paper. I wanted to show you really quickly what the data sensor shows. So if you take a look at my temperature probe, I have one temperature recording at the top and another temperature recording at the bottom. And so one of those was in the fur insulated and one was in the uninsulated cylinder. The really cool thing about technology like this is that while these temperatures were running, this device was also creating a graph for me. We're going to create a graph just like this. And I could also input this data into Google Sheets and ask it to make a line graph as well. However, it's important for us to understand how line graphs are set up. And so by creating one ourselves, it just helps us understand it a little bit more. So I have my graph paper. I'm going to use a pencil, and then for my line edges, I'm also going to use a ruler just to help me keep my graph a little bit cleaner. So the first thing that I'm going to do is decide what should go up on my horizontal, on my vertical, and what's going to go on my horizontal. And so typically what we do is we keep the dependent variable across the horizontal axis. So when I draw this line across, try and make it a little bit more even, I am going to put time here, and my time is control. And then I'm going to put my dependent variable, my temperature, across my vertical axis. And I'll write temperature here. Now, it's always important that we use labels so that we can understand how to read a graph. So my temperature was recorded in degrees Celsius, and my time was recorded in minutes. Okay, now I'm ready to set up my data points. So time we did every 2 minutes. So I'm going to have 0, and then I'm going to have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, and 18, and 20. There we go. And then my temperature, this one we have to take a look at our data for. And so temperature for us started at, our highest temperature was 32.8 degrees. And our lowest temperature was 27.4. So I'm gonna start at 25 degrees Celsius, and I'm gonna end just above my highest temperature at 35. So 25 to 35 degrees Celsius, just so that I can take a look at my data without having to record a bunch of excess paper. Okay, so my fur is going to be a triangle, and my unwrapped cylinder will be my circle then. Okay, so if I start, my first number for the 0 was 32.7. So I'm gonna find the 32, and then I'm gonna mark it at just below the 33 on my 0 mark. And this is gonna be a triangle right here. And then my next one was 32.8. So for my 2, come up and I'm gonna do it just a smidge higher. Okay, and then I'll do the same thing for my data for the unwrapped one. So, okay, ladies and gentlemen, so I have my graph almost complete. So I have my temperature marked up the side, I have my time marked across the bottom, and then my fur wrapped graduated cylinder is the triangle line, and my unwrapped one is the circle line. And so all I need to do now is label it for my lab. So this is my fur insulation on heat loss lab. And now I can draw my conclusions. So what is my conclusion? Is my hypothesis that the fur wrapped graduated cylinder would lose less heat? Is that correct or incorrect? I'm going to say correct, because over time, the same amount of time, it had less heat loss. At the very end, it was a warmer temperature than my unwrapped cylinder. So that is my conclusion. And there is our lab. So your turn to complete your graph and make sure that you submit that to our Google Classroom. If you have questions, make sure that you send me an email. You can also schedule a Google Meet with me. Or if you're running into trouble, remember that on Mondays I have a help session, and so it's okay if you don't get this turned in on Friday. If you join me at that virtual study hall, you can turn it in at the end of that virtual study hall as well. All right, I hope you had fun watching this video.